You're listening to episode 84 of the Fierce Fatty podcast. Today we're talking about how to be a fat ally. Let's do this!
Perfect.
I'm Victoria Wellesby, TEDx speaker, best-selling author and fat activist. I have transformed my life from hating my body with desperately low self-esteem to being a courageous and confident, fierce fatty who loves every inch of this jelly. Society teaches us living in a fat body is bad, but what if we spent less time, money, and energy on the pursuit of thinness and instead focused on the things that actually matter, like if pineapple on pizza should be outlawed, or if the mullet was the greatest haircut of the 20th century. So, how do you stop negative beliefs about your fat body controlling your life? It's the Fierce Fatty podcast. Let's begin. Hello and welcome to this episode. Thanks for being here. I put a post out there saying, what do you want to hear on the podcast? And someone said, how to be a fat ally. And I was like, oh shit, I've never spoken about that. I need to do an episode. Actually, I think I did a video or a blog post like 2 or 3 years ago about it, but I've never actually done a podcast about it. So this is it. And I realize that, of course, a lot of fat people listen to the podcast, but I know a lot of straight size people do too. And I know that this stuff would be really helpful. And even if you're fat and you want to you have the capacity to advocate for other fat people, you can try some of this stuff as well. So I just turned a fan on. Hopefully you can't hear it. It's a tiny little desk fan. Because it's HAAWOOTTT. It is hot. It is hot. Last night I was sweating my tits off. I had to have 2 cold showers. And I was like, do you know what? I'm going to beat the heat. I'm going to go to, I booked a session at the outdoor pool close to me. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. I was like, I'm going to go do some swimming. And I accidentally booked just a 45-minute session. It was so sad. Because of COVID, they have to limit the amount of people are there. Oh, I could have had a 90-minute session. So I went and I was like, did some laps, and then I have like this inflatable chair thing. It's not a chair, it looks like a sausage thing, and you just sit in it. It's great. Every time I get it out, everyone at the pool is always jealous because they're all lying on concrete, and I've got my like thing. I can't even describe it to you. It's like you inflate it with the air that is in the atmosphere. It's kind of like you just whip it around, and then the air that gets trapped inside it, you just roll it up, and then it makes it into a seat that you can lie down on. Anyway, so did some laps, had some fun, then sat on my little thing for like 5 minutes, and they're like, you need to leave in 10 minutes. I was like, what? That's so rude. Why? So anyway, yeah. And then I biked home, and then I walked Dougal, and I was like, do you know what? I've just done a triathlon because I did swimming, I did a bike ride, and now I'm walking Dougal. Yeah. Fucking athlete over here. But all that caused me to be like really hot. So hot that I almost died. I still feel hot today. It's not fair, it's rude. So if you're watching the video, you can actually see my bike in the background. I've got a nice road bike. Very fancy, yeah. I have a road bike, and then I have a a bike with a cruiser with a basket on the front, so that I can take Dougal in the basket, and then he has a little thing that goes over him to keep him safe in the basket. Maybe I should get him a helmet. That would be cute, wouldn't it? Get Dougal the dog in a helmet. Ooh, so cute. Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about how to be a fat ally. And oh, by the way, you know me talking about me doing like my quote unquote triathlon. I'm not saying that to like say, look at me, I'm so good, I'm such a good fatty, I'm doing movement. I'm just telling you about my life, okay? So don't feel like I'm like saying that you, if you're fat, need to be going out and doing quote unquote triathlons. You can just do nothing. It's all good, okay? Just an FYI. That just came into my head. I'm like, no, no, don't feel guilty. All right, so being a fat ally. I should have really, do you know what I just realized is I should have looked at my old post from 2019. What a fucking dingleberry. Let's see what I wrote in 2019. March 5th, 2019. How to be a fat ally by Fierce Fatty. It's a number 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth on Google right now. Oh yeah, okay, I made a video and then I made the transcript. Oh, I can't be bothered to read all this. Hiya, fat people. Yeah, okay. Okay, yeah. Everything that I did in 2019 basically is in here, but this one is way more juicy and lots of ideas for you. First off, I wanted to just share a quote from this article from Nylon. It's called, "What is the role of an ally towards the fat community?" And so I wanted to share this quote just as a kind of important starting point. So quote from this article, I'll link it in the show notes, fiercefatty.com/084, episode 84, so fiercefatty.com/084. If you ever forget the number, it's fiercefatty.com/podcast and you'll find all of them. All right, so here's a quote from this article from Nylon. Quote, "Not everyone is on board with the topic of thin allies, however. The fat community has been burned many times by those who claim to support, but rather take up space and erase voices, particular those of black women, from the conversation. Seeing this happen across identities, Deshawn Harrison, an editor at Wear Your Voice mag and soon-to-be author of Belly of the Beast," can't wait for that to come out. It comes out in August. Says they don't actually, quote, "they don't actually believe in allyship. In my experience, these people are less committed to marginalized people's liberation and more committed to performing a sense of camaraderie to the marginalized group, but for their own personal gain," Harrison explains. In a perfect world, Harrison would define a thin ally as someone who is really understanding and interrogating how fatness interacts with anti-blackness, a topic that requires extensive research. Fatphobia itself is driven from racism, dating far back to the days of slavery when the black body was ridiculed, yet over-sexualized in closed corners by powerful white men. The reason why we look at bodies the way that we do is because racism, anti-fatness, and ableism, Harrison adds. We need to eradicate those things because the issues with your body are predicated on having issues with being black, being disfigured, being fat, or being disabled. So I thought that was important to share that a lot of fat people are kind of questioning the motives of allies and questioning whether they genuinely want to dismantle fat phobia or if they're just doing it to look like a good person. And it's complicated, right? Because we probably do a lot of things to look like a good person. And that's difficult to unravel from wanting to look like a good person and also wanting to genuinely be a good person. And I think all of us want to look like a good person and want to be a good person, right? So bear that in mind if you want to be an ally, that what are the motives behind this, and are you accidentally centering yourself in what you're doing? And the big thing here, okay? So if you take one thing away from this podcast, I'm going to give you practical things to do to be an ally. the one big thing is also practical, is to educate yourself, right? So that is a big cornerstone. You can't be an ally if you kind of think, well, all fat people are unhealthy and they're going to die really soon. It's going to be a really, really difficult to be an ally, a good ally, if you're like, be nice to fat people. Some of them are healthy. Be nice to fat people. Sometimes fat people are struggling to lose weight, and they're trying to be good by losing weight, because then in those instances you're causing more harm than good. So the big thing is, if you still are unsure about fatness and health, which is the big thing, right? It always comes back to, yeah. It's cool to be nice to people. We shouldn't shame fat people, but what about their health? What about the fact that they're draining the health system? It always comes back to health. And people were like, yeah, we shouldn't. Like, we shouldn't be mean to fat people, but we should shame them for being fat because being fat is unhealthy. Oh, shaming causes issues to health? Oh, doesn't matter. Because I want to reinforce the stereotype that all fat people are greedy and unhealthy and going to die soon. So if you are unsure about the health aspect of things, please educate yourself on that. Don't listen to some old episodes of this podcast. Even the most recent ones are really fucking juicy. You can get some good retorts to when people say, what about the health? Yes. Okay, alrighty, tighty, pig and a pokey. Let's go through. So the big thing is educate yourself. Now, I'm going to go through different categories and tell you how practical things you can try if you want to be an ally. So the first category that I want to talk about is how not to be a dick to fat friends. So in the category of your personal relationships with fat people and what you can do around that. So first off, if you don't have any fat friends, what is up with that? Look around your friend circle. Do you have fat friends? If you don't, that's kind of weird. Why don't you have fat friends? It could just be that you're like, I don't have any friends, Victoria. And they're like, okay, cool, that's cool. You're off the hook. But if you have a big circle of people and they all tend to be, thin white people, then question about like, why is that? Okay, so first off, don't expect us to educate you around fat issues or relive our trauma to convince you that the world is fat phobic. And a lot of times straight-sized people want to see the evidence, right? They kind of want to be like, well, what's been your experience? Tell me about a time that you've been fat shamed, and tell me about a time, like, what's it like for you? And sometimes, if a fat person doesn't want to talk about that shit because it's fucking traumatic. And it's kind of like you want to hear that. It's kind of like trauma porn or something, being like, oh, tell me about the time that you were discriminated against. Oh, so hot. It's kind of like that, right? You can just presume that any fat person out there has experienced stigma, trauma around their bodies and all that type of stuff, and just walking with that knowledge and not expecting a fat person to relay their experience of living in a fat body to educate you or to entertain you. Now, if you invite us somewhere, say, oh, hey, let's go and grab some lunch. Make sure that the place, if you're choosing the place, is accessible. So if you're going to a restaurant, make sure that you are choosing a restaurant that doesn't have any booths or chairs without arms, or is not at the top of a hill and you have to park at the bottom of the hill, doesn't have loads of stairs, is not really cramped, is not some type of weird diet place. Like there's this just on the street here in front of me on Davy Street in Vancouver, some new shop has opened and it's like what is that? Paleo. It's a paleo restaurant. And I'm just like, eye rolly, it's like a diet restaurant. Don't invite a fat friend somewhere like that. You know, they might be fine with it, but why risk it? And in regards to is it somewhere that they can actually sit down and be comfortable? Like, you would not believe the amount of places that are like, oh, sorry, we only have tiny little stools, you know, those like high stools, or booths where the you can't move the table. I mean, if there's a booth and there's loads of room and you can move the table out, that's great, because then it doesn't have any arms, right? But if it's like fixed in, and your fat friend is going to have to squeeze in, and depending where they are on their you know, how they feel about their body, they might not want to say anything. They might be really embarrassed, and they would be like, you know, they don't want to say, oh, by the way, this chair is really small for me. They would just sit in discomfort, depending on how they are feeling, or what's going on with them in regards to their communication style or whatever. Or they might not feel safe with you talking about it. But if you can just take that away and make sure that you're going somewhere that they can actually be comfortable, that's amazing. Another thing you can do is actually ask them where they want to go. They might have places that you like, where they know, okay, this place definitely has places that I can sit. And so an idea might just be to say, hey, where do you want to go? And they can tell you, you know, this is where is good for me. Next, be cognizant of how they could feel in a group activity. A big thing, a lot of times people are telling me that they don't do activities with friends, especially if they're straight size, is because they know that they feel that and worry that the straight size people in the group are going to be judging them on how well they are able to perform that activity, and it just makes it really anxious, and it makes them feel really anxious, and it just makes it not fun. So, for example, say if you're going on a walk or something, you're going on a walk through a meadow and it's beautiful, or a hike or whatever. Why not say every so often, let's have a break, and not make it so the fat person always has to be, let's have a break. Another thing that I have experienced is being the slower person, and then people waiting for me, and then feeling guilty that they're waiting, and feeling like, you know, they're all just there staring at me, and I'm there being slow and out of breath, and then when I finally get to them, then we just keep going, versus when I get to them saying, let's just chill out for a bit, let's just have a break of a couple of minutes or whatever, let's just sit down on this bench, or let's just, you know, making it into something that's nice and fun and enjoyable, versus, you know, let's get to the end of this destination as fast as possible and fuck the fatties. And, you know, so if you were the one that was speaking up and being like, oh, I need a break, then it would really take the stress off that fat person to say, I need a break, because it can be really, really anxiety provoking, feeling like to speak up and be like, I need a break. We've just climbed this mountain, and, you know, and especially if people are there waiting for you, they're having a break, and so you're never getting that break, because the people who are faster are there having a nice little break, relaxing, waiting for you to catch up, and then off they go as soon as you come. So they're always just getting more breaks, and so it just makes it harder, and it's not fair. Okay, so think about how the fat person feels in that situation if you're doing something like a physical activity, or if you're doing something like, for example, going last summer. Was it last summer? I think it was, yeah, last summer I went kayaking with my two nieces, and we went to the kayak place, and because I'm confident, I don't really stress about this, but before I was confident, this would have been really fucking traumatizing, getting a wetsuit. And so a straight size person, they probably wouldn't even think about it. Like, of course there's going to be a wetsuit to fit you. But is there? Like, if you were to invite a fat friend kayaking, for example, and you knew that they would have wetsuits, why not call ahead and say, hey, what's the size? What sizes do you carry in your wetsuits? Oh, you only go up to a size medium or a size large or whatever? Okay, well, maybe I should let my fat friend know, and so we can decide what we want to do. Maybe maybe there's somewhere else that we can go that has equipment that is going to fit a fat person. So just think about how they're experiencing this thing, and a lot of times you just don't realize, because the world is built for straight sized people, and it doesn't even occur to a lot of straight sized people that, oh, this thing that I take for granted, it doesn't fit fat people. All right, so don't comment on other people's bodies in any way. Obviously, don't be critical, but just avoiding commenting on people's bodies in general. A big thing that a lot of people tell me is that I don't even want people to say that I look good, because it means that I know they are checking, they are looking at me and they are evaluating me. So I just don't even talk about my body at all. And sometimes people can they want to go the opposite way, and so when they have a fat friend, they want to be all the time being like, oh my god, you look amazing, oh yes, yours da 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 da. And sometimes we can tell, right, that you're trying to overcompensate for living in a fatphobic world, that it makes it awkward. Like if you have a friend and they're like, oh, I love it when you compliment me, just, listen to what your friend says. But if you're just constantly saying, oh, I like your hair, or I like this, or whatever, just maybe try not, and see how that goes. And if you do need to talk about bodies for whatever reason, do it neutrally. And if you're talking about fat bodies, just don't make it a thing, or affirming that it's okay to be fat. That would be amazing. Don't use the O words, even if you have people in your life who are fat and they use the O words. Just because they're using the O words doesn't mean that the O words are not still slurs. They're slurs. They are stigmatizing. And so unless your friend says, hey, I want you to address me as a O-word person, then, respect what people want you to call them. But if you're talking about fat bodies for whatever reason that could be happening, use neutral language like fat. If your fat friend is not down with the word fat, they could feel offended by that. Use words like bigger bodied or higher weight. Okay? So, higher weight individual, or someone with a bigger body or a larger body. Okay? Don't use them O words, they're nasty. All right. So if you use social media, share images of fat people who are fat and they're an infini-fat. So someone who's very fat, someone who is fat and black, someone who is fat and trans, or fat and disabled. Okay? So don't just be sharing images of quote unquote palatable fat people. That's a trap that a lot of thin people fall into. When I see thin people's, straight sized people's social media accounts, and they feel like they're being an ally by sharing a normative body that happens to be a little bit fat. So an example would be my body. So I'm a medium fat. I used to be kind of small/medium, but I'm definitely a medium fat now. And my body is, I'd say, it's pretty palatable in the fat world in regards to most people are not going to be like, oh my God, why are you sharing a picture of her? It's disgusting. You're promoting fatness. It's unhealthy. A lot of people still would, but that's easier, right? And that's safer for folks to do. A lot of straight-sized people don't want to share fat people who have other identities, or very fat people, because they don't want to come under scrutiny. They don't want people saying, oh, but you've gone too far with that image because that person's really fat. And then having to deal with the fat phobes that are following them. And so they just post something which is it's easier, right? Consider posting things that are not as palatable, quote unquote palatable. Obviously, everyone, palatable, I'm using the word palatable as in the reaction of the general public to these types of bodies. It's like when what was it? Cosmopolitan had Tess Holliday on the front of the magazine, versus they've had other plus size people, I presume, and because Tess Holliday is clearly clearly fat, and she's still very palatable because she's white, and she's not an infinity fat, and she's cisgendered and able-bodied, etc., etc. Still, they got a lot of pushback for that, but it was great that they did that. Okay, so if anyone talks shit about fat people, say if you're at a family gathering, something like that, shut that shit down. You have way more power as a straight-sized person than fat people when it comes to talking about how it's not okay to be a bigot around, fat phobia. And other people, other straight-sized people, will listen to you a million times over more than they would listen to a fat person. If a fat person was like, hey, by the way, fat people can be healthy, then straight-sized people are like, well, you would say that, you're fat, because you're so greedy, you're saying that because blah blah blah. They would question the motives of that fat person saying that. But when a straight-sized person says it, then it's seen as more legitimate and real, which is 1000% fucked up and not okay, and we should just be listening to fat voices around this stuff. But we live in a fat-phobic society, and straight-sized voices are seen as more legitimate, more intelligent, more balanced than fat voices, which is fat phobia. But if you can use that privilege that you've got because of your body size for good, then that is amazing. Okay, so when I say you need to shut that shit down, it depends on who you are and how your brain works. It might not be something that's accessible for you to be like, excuse me, Uncle Chad, why the fuck are you talking shit about fat people? You are a piece of shit. That might not be accessible for you to do something like that. It might not be appropriate. But, imagine if Uncle Chad is making jokes about how that fat person over there should really lay off the pizza and not wear that tube top or whatever. And you can talk to Uncle Chad right there and then, or you can do other things. So for example, you could maybe say Chad is your mum's brother. You can say, hey, mum, your brother was really being a massive bell end at the barbecue yesterday. Do you mind just talking to him about that and telling him that talking about fat people like that is not appropriate? You could do something like that. Or you could maybe send a casual text to Uncle Chad and say something like, hey, Uncle, I know that you love me and respect my opinion. So I wanted to share with you that when you spoke about that woman yesterday, it made me really uncomfortable. Can you please not talk about how being fat is bad, because human bodies come in all sizes and that's okay. And now Uncle Chad might be like, oh shit, okay, I never realized. Afterwards I felt bad or whatever. Or Uncle Chad could be like, screw you, fat people are unhealthy. And that's where you can then educate Uncle Chad. And I know this is probably the most difficult thing for people to do, is to call out people, especially if they have more power. And sometimes it's not going to be possible. For example, if your boss is being fat phobic, and you worry that having an honest and open conversation with them could mean that you could lose your job, you can do something like instead talk to HR and make a report about it, So, or talk to your colleagues and say, hey, that was really fucked up when blah, blah, blah said that. But honestly, you have so much power in this situation. This is where you can really do some great work, and it's calling out other straight-sized people when they are being bigots. Okay, so one thing that I noticed with friends throughout my life has been this theme, and I keep noticing in it, and I'm like, interesting, is that people think that hanging out with me gives them the permission to be quote unquote unhealthy. Like hanging out with me gives them a ticket to eat foods that they have deemed unhealthy. And this is like throughout my life, right? So not just now when they probably, people probably feel a lot safer with me because they know what I do. They know I don't, shame people around food and body size and all that type of stuff, obviously. And so they probably, more recent friends probably do feel that permission from me because that's just me in general. But when I wasn't doing this stuff, people would, friends, I would see this thing of them being like, fuck it, let's be bad. And like my body gave them the permission because clearly I was unhealthy, because if I had a fat body, clearly I was engaging in eating quote unquote bad food. And so things like, I remember one time my friend was staying over, we ordered a pizza, and I had like 3 slices, and then I stopped eating, and she was like, "Are you not eating anymore?" And I was like, "No, I'm good. I'm full or whatever." And she was like so disgruntled that I wasn't eating more pizza because it kind of ended her permission to eat more pizza. And she was like, she and I was like, "It's okay if you want to eat more. Like, I'm just not that hungry right now. Like, I'm full. Like, it's not, it's not a big deal. Just eat what your body is telling you that it wants." And I could tell that she really was struggling with that because, well, if the fat person is only eating 3 slices and I'm straight size, well, surely that means that I should be eating 2 slices, and it was kind of like, I almost felt like I had to eat more just to make her feel better, So yeah, are you doing things like that with your fat friends, being like, fuck it, let's be so unhealthy, because you're unhealthy. You must love being unhealthy. Yeah. Okay, so next, let's move on to clothing stores. So yeah, most straight size people don't know, and I say most, the people who listen to Fierce Fatty podcasts probably do know, but a lot of straight size people don't realize that most fat people can't go and buy clothes in a store, or if they can, it'll be like one store. And it makes me think about when I was on the BBC show, one of the days that this didn't make it to the final cut, but one of the days we went to a city centre, and David, who is a plus male model, wanted to style us all and do a photo shoot with this famous photographer. And so we said to the crew before, "Do you know if there are any plus size stores where we're going to this mall," wherever it was, I can't remember where it was. And they were like, "Oh yeah, definitely, no big deal." And we were like, really? Because the photo shoot was in like a couple of days. And so we were worried, like, because we knew, is there places that we can shop? Because we have this photo shoot happening in a couple of days, and if not, it means that we need to be ordering stuff like express delivery right now. And so the whole day was us driving. We drove to this place. We got to the mall, the shopping centre. We went into first New Look or whatever, just a standard store. And so we went in. "Do you have plus sizes?" "No, we only carry them online." "Okay, great. All right, next door. Do you have plus sizes?" "No, we don't have them at all." "Next door. Do you?" No. And we found this department store where 2 of the guys that was in the group could find one size that would fit them. So 2 of the guys one of them got a shirt and someone got a t-shirt or something like that. But everyone else couldn't get anything. And the camera people literally were crying. They were crying because they had no idea that this was the reality, that we can't just go and buy clothes. And they were really sad about it. And we had to be like, yeah, this is this is what it is. And so because straight size people can go into clothes shops, why not be asking for them to get bigger sizes? Say, hey, why is it that you stop at size 16 or 18 or 2X or whatever it is that they stop at? What the heck is that? Or why can I only get plus sizes online? Like, what happens if someone who's plus size wants to come and try on the clothes? Does it mean that they can't? Like, what's that about? Like, you know, because the first store we went to was New Look, because we knew New Look carried plus sizes. But a big thing that they're doing nowadays is all of the plus sizes are online. Like, I went into H&M and I was like, oh my God, yes, H&M has started carrying plus sizes. Again, they only went up to probably 3X. And I would be like a 2X, 3X. And they were like, yes, we do. I went to the store. Yes, we carry plus sizes. You can find them online. And it's just like so sad. So if you can use your privilege there in talking to, you know, even just the salesperson, and you never know if, you know, saying to that salesperson, oh shit, that's fucked up. You mean I can't go shopping with my fat friend? That's not cool. That's kind of really, what? You never know what that sales assistant might not have realized that and say to the manager or something. You never know, right? It's just continued education of saying, this is not cool. And if you want to be a real badass, some straight size allies do things like stop shopping at places that don't carry plus sizes. And that would be such a badass thing. So I'm not going to shop at that place until they start carrying plus sizes. Because if my friends can't shop there, then I'm not shopping there. Like, fuck them. Fuck them. I kind of feel like that about you know, when you go into stores with your thin friend and they're buying clothes and shit, and then as a fat person you'll be like, oh, I'm going to look at the accessories, and I feel like fuck this shop. I'm not giving them my money to buy their fucking accessories when they won't make clothes for me. Like, I'm not going to I'm going to say buy their shoes, but I wouldn't fit into their shoes anyway because I've got big wide feet. And yeah, so I kind of feel like, no, fuck off. I'm not giving you my money for accessories. So that would be a really badass thing to do. And when you see companies say, so this could be in person or online, when you see companies say, we make clothes for all bodies, and then people are like, oh, cool, they probably do. And I cannot tell you the amount of times that I've seen a company say, we make clothes for all bodies, and they go to like 2X or 3X or 4X. Whatever they go to, it's still not making clothes for all bodies, because there's always going to be someone who's bigger than their biggest size, right? Unless they make custom clothes, then they cannot say, we make clothes for all bodies. And it is jarring now, as a fat person, it is so jarring to see a company say, we make clothes for all bodies, and get really excited that now this company makes clothes for all bodies. And then you go to the website and they're like, oh, LOL, now we go to 1X. And because you get excited, right? You're like, oh my God, cool. I can now buy clothes from this other place that I really like. And it's just even worse than if they had said, nah, actually, fuck the fatties. It'd be preferable if they just said fuck the fatties versus doing some bullshit. We are inclusive if you're under a size 1X. Right? So in that situation, leaving a comment on their social media of being like, hey, by the way, you've made this post about how you're inclusive, but you are actually only inclusive to people who are this size or lower. And using this tag, like we cater for all bodies, is really not cool. It's fucked up. And you should change that, because you're telling lies. So, yeah. Next, let's move on to education. So if you are a parent or a caretaker or whatever, or if you know any children, are your kids coming home? Are the kids coming home with homework about quote unquote healthy food? Or are they weighing kids? anything to do with bullshit around that. Get them to stop that shit at once. Ugh. I remember being weighed at school, and it's just like, why did they need to do that? Why? I remember going to a museum, and part of the museum exhibition was to find out if you were healthy as a kid. And so being forced to be weighed, and I remember being like, I don't want to, and being forced, and having the adult stare at the number and go, oh, that's high, that's big. Like, why the fuck am I going to a museum? It was like a history museum. Why the fuck am I going to a history museum to be fucking shamed and being told my BMI as a kid? Like, what the fuck? So yeah, that is so messed up, and that needs to stop. And it's going to encourage all sorts of problems later on in life with mental health and all sorts of things. So telling those in charge about how damaging that is really important. And what about our kids being forced into grueling PE lessons? So what do you call it in the States? We call it physical education, but sports. So are they being forced into doing stuff that causes trauma? Like, oh my gosh, when I was in school, once a year we would do the bleep test, and we would do a series of running. So we'd do the 1500 and something else. What is 1500 in 1500 meters in kilometers? Meters in kilometers. Let's see how far. It really wasn't that far, but it was. Okay, so 1.5 kilometer. Well, Jesus, 1.5 kilometer. So we would do, and so if you've never run before, just go and do a 1.5 kilometer. Just off you go. Just go and, like, if you've not been building up to it, now we know, oh, if you want to learn how to run, you build it up, and you do like little increments, and you take rest, you run for 10 seconds and you stop, and all that type of stuff. Like, you train for it. And so we've got these kids all running around a field, and the fast kids are going around and they're all great, and then the whole class is there waiting for the fat kids or the slow kids or the disabled kids to make it round. And it is so traumatizing. And then the bleep test, if you don't know what the bleep test is you have to run from one side of the room to the other before the bleep. And so the first bleep is a slow beep, and then it keeps getting faster and faster and faster. And then how many can you do before you run out, miss the beep? And it was traumatizing, obviously. And it's not helpful, right? It's not helpful to help kids enjoy physical activity, because moving your body can be so much fun. And the reason to move your body is because it's fun, and it helps you be strong and mobile and all that type of stuff if you can move your body. But it's okay as well if you can't move your body. And there's lots of different ways to move your body. Doing, running and doing the 1500 or the bleep test or whatever is not, what's that achieving? Why not instead give kids the option? Hey, do you want to do the 1500, or do you want to play a game of basketball or netball? I liked netball. Do you want to do the 1500, or do you want to do some roly-polies or swing around on that rope for a bit, or whatever? Whenever I was given a choice in what we would do, sometimes we were given a choice in the semester, what do we want to do? And it just made it so much better that you could choose versus being forced to do this thing that you didn't like. And then feeling like a piece of shit afterwards. So, are the kids being forced to do these things which are traumatizing, that is going to put them off exercise and movement for the rest of their lives? How many fat people have been traumatized? How many straight size people? How many people have been traumatized by PE at school because we are forced to not listen to our bodies and perform like an athlete, Okay, so tell the school, write a letter, go in, but like, listen up here, motherfuckers. Listen up here. And as well, we were talking about like, are kids being traumatized, but are they having positive experience as well? Like, are students being taught about body diversity? Are they learning about fat issues? And so that, maybe when they're older and they're talking about social justice issues, are they talking about fat issues as well? Are they being actively harmed by the curriculum? Who can you talk to about getting that changed? And say in like a university setting or any setting, can you suggest getting a fat expert in to talk about these issues? Especially if you're like at school or university studying, in the health world. Say if you're studying to be, I don't know, a nutritionist or whatever, or a dietitian or a doctor or anything to do with the body, and that curriculum is fat phobic as shit. Can you suggest, hey, by the way, let's have a balanced discussion here. Why don't we get in a fat person to talk about what it's like to be fat? How about that? Strange, I know. All right, so at the doctor. Now, at the doctor, if you're straight size and the doctor weighs you and says, oh, your BMI says that you're in the normal weight category, how about saying, the normal weight category, I actually don't subscribe to the BMI, and just because I'm in the normal weight category doesn't mean that I'm necessarily healthy. And if someone falls into into other categories, doesn't mean they're necessarily unhealthy. And, versus being like, oh, I'm a quote unquote normal weight, amazing, that's so cool to hear, but, instead of being, praising the fact that you are straight size, why not challenge the doctor's assumptions? You've got way more power in this situation than if a fat person does it. Why not ask? You can just do this as a matter of course. Like, say if they give you a gown, what's the biggest size that you carry of these gowns? You only have one size? But what about if a fat person comes in? Oh, just putting the seed in their brain. What about the blood pressure cuff? Ask them, when you're getting blood pressure taken, do you have different sizes for people who's have bigger arms? Oh, you don't? I heard that if the blood pressure cuff is the wrong size and it's too tight, it can give a faulty reading. Just putting it out there. You're just having a conversation. What about the size of the chairs in the waiting room? My doctor I go to, it's great. They have like double wide chairs with really sturdy wood. They're great, right? And they have a mix of all of these chairs. And so even just saying to the receptionist, I'm curious about your chairs. Do you have any others like chairs for when fat people come in? Just making a comment like that is putting the seed in someone's brain. I mean, if you want to be a real badass about it, you can, be like, hey, what can we do to make sure that fat people have an accessible experience here? That would be amazing. Something like, so I had my COVID shot last week, and when I was there having my COVID shot, I was just asking them about the needle sizes. I said, what happens when someone is very fat, comes in? Do you have different needle sizes? And the guy was like, yeah, we have 2 different needle sizes, 1 inch and 1.5 inch. And I was like, okay, and so what needle size would I have? And he was like, oh, the 1 inch. And so I was thinking, okay, so someone who's a medium fat could have the 1 inch, and then maybe the 1.5 inch is good enough for other people. But then I was thinking afterwards, but is it though? Should they have a 2 inch? They were, I don't know. Like, I don't know about needle length and how much, what that could look like. I presume maybe if someone, they might try a different spot. I don't know. But then again, why not just have a longer needle? I don't know. But anyway, just having that conversation, just a quick question. Just a quick question is amazing. All right. Now, in the workplace, talk about including size discrimination in diversity training. So a lot of workplaces nowadays have diversity training, which is amazing. And if you see that going on, hey, can we add in size diversity too? Why not get in a fat expert so we can talk about that as well? When people are talking about diets, let's see if you can shut that down. Say, hey, by the way, I don't know, there might be people here who have eating disorders, and hearing that diet talk might be really triggering for them. And fat people might hear that too and think that you don't want to be fat, which is harmful to them. Ask for uniform sizes to be expanded. It's not acceptable to have just a few sizes, and it's not acceptable to say to women, for example, oh, we have some bigger men's sizes, just use a men's uniform. It's not acceptable to not have a uniform to work in. I put a questionnaire up on my Instagram stories recently and said, tell me about your workplace fat phobia experiences, and one person said they've been waiting 1.5 years for any type of uniform at all. So if you've got a uniform at your work, can you ask people to order in more sizes so that fat people don't feel awful? But I remember when I had a uniform in my job, and they were like, what size are you? And I remember at the time I was like size 18. And I said size 18, and the woman was like, well, we don't have anything size 18, but we've got a size 14. Do you want to try that? And I was like, okay. And like, why? And it was like a trouser that had no stretch at all, and it didn't fit, and so I had to just wear my own clothes. And that's me being a size 18. That's not even, the average person isn't far off that size. So why the fuck is that the biggest size? They didn't even have size 18. So yeah. And when wellness initiatives roll out, because, companies love some wellness bullshit, there's a whole blog on the wellness, like how wellness is bullshit, and how wellness practitioners don't have really any education unless, they're an actual, certified. But to be a wellness practitioner, you can just say you're a wellness practitioner and go in and traumatize the fucking work population. And a lot of times wellness, when they have a wellness initiative, a lot of workplaces, it's about weighing people and telling them they're fat, and telling them that if they lose weight, then if they don't lose weight, one person told me they've been told if they don't lose weight, their insurance is going to go up, things like that. And so when a wellness initiative rolls out, contact the organizers and tell them, if you know the details of it, how this is super harmful. In my last corporate workplace, we had some fucking bullshit wellness thing come out, and I messaged HR and said, this is fucked up, but in nicer terms. And they changed it. So you never know how powerful your words can be. Don't laugh at fat jokes. If people are making fat jokes, if you can, confront the person. If not, contact HR and just say, hey, I want to make a note that this person is a fucking bigot. Remove magazines that have weight loss stories from break rooms. Ask for larger chairs. Ask for chairs that aren't bolted to the floor. A lot of people are telling me that in their break rooms, they have these tiny little break rooms, and they literally can't navigate them. Imagine that, not having some place to go and make your lunch and sit down and have your lunch. And are the break rooms safe for people to eat lunch? Like, are there signs up about the Weight Watchers meeting? Are there things about how to be healthy up? And make sure that the workplace, like whatever it is, like the floor or the office, isn't crowded, so that fat people can literally get around without having to negotiate obstacles. It's like, yeah, some pretty basic things. Like, can people sit down? Are they given these tiny little, plastic chairs to sit in? Are they, are they going to not sit in them because they know that they're going to collapse? And how horrifying would that be for that to happen at work? All right, so the final thing that I'm going to cover here is pay fat people. Pay fat people. Now, by the way, this list that I'm making is not exhaustive. There are probably many things that I haven't even thought about, and many ways that you can be an ally. So just an FYI, I don't know if I mentioned at the beginning. So big one, pay fat people. So as you probably know, if you're listening to the Fierce Fatty podcast, is that fat people get paid less, they get hired less, they get promoted less. They are discriminated at work the same way that they're discriminated in lots of different places. So I get loads of messages from people saying how I have educated them and how I've changed their lives, which is awesome. And I also get messages from thin folks who say I've taught them so much and now they can teach it in their programs. And I feel kind of annoyed by that. Like I have done 84 episodes of this podcast, and each podcast takes about 4 hours of my work, the preparation and all that type of stuff. And then I pay others to edit it and share it and all that type of stuff. And, so it costs me money to make the podcast, for straight size people to listen, to take that knowledge that they got from me, and then they make money from it without compensating me. Like I feel pissed off about it. And then to message me to let me know that they're making money from what I've taught them without offering to compensate me. I'm just, yeah. So, and of course, I make the podcast to promote my business, and it's for me. Like I love doing it, and I'm not going to stop because sometimes straight size people make money from what I've taught them, because mostly it's fat people that are benefiting from this podcast, and that's wonderful. That's exactly what I want, right? But if you listen to the podcast and you're never going to be a client of mine, but you are learning from me and that is benefiting you, then you should compensate me for everything that you've learned from me, right? And too often we expect free labor from marginalized people, and we never consider the cost to them emotionally, the literal cost, the cost for that labor, and even get mad when marginalized people ask for support, whatever that support could look like. So consider that, like donate to fat people, subscribe to fat people, join fat people's Patreons. I personally don't have a Patreon because I don't want to do that stuff. But I know that there are lots of fat people and fat people with marginalized identities that do have Patreons. And so you can support someone just by sending them a few bucks. Just, it's a wonderful gesture to say, hey, I know that you have put in many hours of labor and I am benefiting from your free labor. And so I don't want to make it free anymore. Here's $10, and you might think, well, it's, that's not enough, but anything to say, what you're doing is important is wonderful for any, marginalized person. Make sure that if you have the capacity to give us jobs, to promote us when we work in companies. And so if you're thinking, oh, well, that thin person is probably more qualified because I think, a thin person would look better for the company, challenge your assumptions, right? Give fat people opportunities. And if you can't give us money, then promote us, share our work, credit us. I tell you what, people take my stuff that I put on Instagram, take my name off it, take out of any identifying information about me, use my caption, and don't credit me. So they literally erase me from it. And then if I ever see it and, I say, oh, hey, excuse me, that's my work. You need to credit me. And then they just, they'll delete it and then block me or whatever. Seriously, so credit us, tag us, tell people where you learned XYZ concept from. So if you read a book or if you read a blog post or you listened to a podcast episode or saw some really cool social media concept and you see that from, a fat person, be like, hey, I saw a post from ABC about XYZ and that's really cool, so credit us. Okay, so I've been meaning to do this for a while, and on the theme of paying fat people, there obviously I share how you can work with me, but for those people who know that they're never going to work with me because they're straight size, they're just listening for the education, whatever, I want to give you the opportunity, if you want to connect with me on PayPal and donate, contribute in any way that you want to. So if you're listening and you want to contribute on PayPal to me, then you can go to paypal.me, so that's M-E, paypal.me/fierce fatty. I'm going to put a link in the show notes if you don't remember it. So it's paypal.me/fierce fatty. So you can make a one-time donation there. So if this episode has really helped you to learn how to be a fat ally, and if all of the other 83 episodes before this has helped you and helped you understand fat phobia and you're a straight size person, consider donating to me. And I'm not the only fat person out there. There are a lot of other fat people who have other marginalized identities and are doing incredible things. And, like I said, I don't have a Patreon. There are others who have a Patreon that you can donate monthly to, and that will give you perks. So I don't have a Patreon, but you can send money over PayPal. Again, that's paypal.me/fierce fatty. So to conclude here, I want you to know that you're gonna fuck up. We're all gonna fuck up, right? Even with the best intentions, we're going to fuck up around this stuff. You're a human being. I'm a human being. But that doesn't mean that you should not try. And as we all are, we're all trying to be better people, right? So don't worry too much about, never doing anything or never speaking up, because what if you speak up and it's not perfect? Well, it's probably not going to be perfect, right? Whenever I talk about anything on here, I'm always like, oh, okay, it's not perfect. And a part of me is like, oh, well, don't do it then if it's not perfect. And the other part of me is like, listen up, Victoria. You can't. It's not possible. It's not possible. And I want to say thank you. If you do want to be a fat ally and you have been learning this stuff, I really appreciate it. And I really value you being out in the world, looking out for fat people. It's really cool, and we need more of it. And a lot of people are like, we don't need allies, or allies are not great. And yeah, sometimes allies aren't great, but I feel like we do need you, because the world listens to straight size people way more than it listens to fat people. And hopefully one day that's not going to be the case, and we can all just run around meadows and hug and shit like that. But until that point, use that beautiful privilege that you've got and tell people to stop being bellends. Okay? All right. Okay, so thanks for hanging out with me today on this episode. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Thanks for listening to the episode. And if you feel ready to get serious about this work and want to know when the doors open to Fierce Fatty Academy, which is my signature program where I teach all about how to overcome your fat phobic beliefs and learn to love your fat body, then go to fiercefatty.com/waitlist. Again, that is fiercefatty.com/waitlist. waitlist to get your name on the waitlist for when Fierce Fatty Academy, my signature program, opens.